If I were to take you back 1 year, I'd say at least 90% of you had probably never even heard the name Zach Wilson. Of course, we all knew Trevor Lawrence, and it had been that way for multiple years. It's just crazy how much things can change. I mean, Justin Fields seemed locked for that second quarterback off the board, and he still had a great season, but somehow Wilson was able to hop him despite that. Back then, Wilson was so far off the NFL radar that he couldn't even crack the honorable mentions list on the top quarterbacks of the 2021 class. So in this video, we're going to take you through Wilson's journey from a largely unwanted recruit to the quarterback no one really cared about outside Utah, to the 2021 NFL Draft's darling quarterback who has somehow taken the hype train away from stars like Lawrence and Fields. Zach Wilson grew up a massive Utah football fan. His dad played for them in the 90s, and they had season tickets since Wilson was young. In high school, his coaches could tell he was a freak athlete, but there wasn't too much fanfare for him. So his senior year, he decided to put all his eggs in one basket. He gave up basketball and pursued his dream as a quarterback. He went to QB camps, but sort of stuck out. Like, sure, his height made him below average for a future college quarterback, but he was also about 30 pounds light as well. So he went on a, get this, 5,500 calorie a day diet. That caused him to gain, as you might estimate, 21 pounds in just 2 months. His dream school, Utah, though, still didn't ever extend him an offer. And Utah's rival BYU, as the two biggest programs in the state, they both failed to see what he could become. As Wilson continued to improve and BYU underwent coaching changes, they decided they wanted him. Only problem was, well, I guess two problems. One, Wilson grew up hating BYU, and two, at this point in time, it was the final weekend for recruiting visits, and Wilson was scheduled to meet with Iowa. Fortunately for BYU, Iowa signed Spencer Petras, so Wilson's itinerary was suddenly open. And BYU must have been pretty convincing to persuade a lifelong Utes fan to make a last-second switch to the team he grew up rooting against. Side note, I just feel bad for Boise State because they pretty much had him locked up right before this. Now zooming forward to October of his freshman year, Wilson made his first start. Being such a young player making an impact, there was some hope Wilson would be able to make a big jump once he played a full season. But there were injury problems throughout his sophomore year to the point where the team contemplated redshirting him. And his production on the field had dipped as he threw for just 11 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. This is when even the thought of a Zach Wilson first-round selection seemed like a pipe dream. I mean, there were questions if he would even be drafted at all. It seemed like he had the traits of an NFL quarterback if you watched him, but there was just too much going wrong. In the 2020 offseason, BYU coaches said the starting quarterback position was wide open. So Wilson immediately went to work. He would make a 650-mile drive almost every weekend for 2 months straight to train with former BYU quarterback John Beck in Southern California. According to the Deseret News, Beck himself trains about 20 NFL quarterbacks a year. Wilson's arm was the strongest it had ever been, and he was now able to throw in positions he had never been able to before. Beck said he could now consistently make hard throws easy. You might think a year where spring practices were largely wiped out would drastically hurt a quarterback's development, but with Wilson, he ended up taking advantage of the opportunity and really focusing on himself. He wanted to bloom like other young quarterbacks were able to, as they rode late college success into NFL stardom. In fact, he spent a large portion of the offseason studying Joe Burrow and his big senior season that seemingly came out of nowhere. His dad said Zach just wanted to see what made Joe Burrow, Joe Burrow. Little did the rest of the world know, Wilson was about to put together his own Burrow rendition at BYU. His passing coordinator said, "I think that jump, that Joe Burrow-esque leap, of all the different things that factor into that, I feel the biggest one is Zach's preparation and his passion for the game. A lot of guys say they love the game, but his passion was backed up. His passion equates with sacrifices and the work it takes." Wilson threw for 33 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. He was making some wild throws that you just don't really see on Saturdays. We're used to seeing these bombs on Sundays. And when you're playing like that, the world will start to take notice. Especially as BYU started to win more and more and become ranked. Wilson finished 8th in Heisman voting and took BYU to their first 10-win season in almost a decade. So while some may look at him and criticize his level of competition, all I see is elevation. He took his team to a place where it frankly shouldn't have been. Despite such a great season, a report surfaced in December from a Walter Football article calling Wilson a Johnny Manziel comp without the drugs. Apparently, a scout from an NFC team said he has character concerns and called him an entitled brat. If you're a Jets fan who hasn't heard this before, you're probably panicking, but don't worry because it sounds like this couldn't be farther from the truth. Multiple other media outlets have criticized the report. This is actually a guy who goes out of his way to help brighten the day of cancer patients. He's extremely coachable, and funny enough, Wilson is actually pretty money conscious, so calling him an entitled brat, I don't know if they were talking to his high school ex disguised as an NFL scout or something, but whoever said those things certainly had an axe to grind. Or hey, maybe this NFC scout was actually just a 49ers or Panthers scout hoping Wilson would just fall in the draft. Seems like a smart plan to me. Unfortunately for them, I don't think the Jets are going to fall for it. Then again, this is the Jets we're talking about. Anyway, Wilson's deep ball is arguably the best in the class. On throws that traveled 30 plus yards in the air, he had a 74% completion percentage. Sure, sometimes he can get a little too deep ball happy to the point where he's missing the opportunity on much easier throws, but hey, he sure is accurate on those deep balls, so you can only criticize that to a certain extent. A lot of people like to point to the Coastal Carolina game as a sign that he struggles against better opponents. Yes, his stats were not good, but if you go back and watch, there were quite a few drop passes and his interception came on a Hail Mary. So it's important to not tunnel vision on just one thing and look at the broader scope, like his entire season's worth of film. Like it or not, Wilson looks ready for the NFL. None of us might have expected this a year ago. Even Wilson himself has said that he wanted a shot in the NFL eventually, but didn't imagine it would come this fast. He's now a historical draft riser, and the expectations surrounding him, maybe for the first time in his life, are no longer stamped with an underdog status.